John D. Rockefeller is probably the most famous billionaire who ever lived. He gave us Standard Oil, modern monopolies, antitrust laws, and a personal fortune that makes today's tech bros look like they're working for minimum wage. Nearly 150 years of American corporate ruthlessness all goes back to this one guy. But the whole thing started because of a secret train discount. Yeah, seriously. One shady railroad contract destroyed an entire free market. A deeply religious accountant walked into 26 different offices, handed the owners a piece of paper, and legally extorted 22 of them into giving up their entire life's work. The whole thing ended with a massive public uprising, an illegal corporate shell company, and the most brutal business trick ever pulled. So how did a secret train ticket lead to a 39-day corporate bloodbath and the total domination of the American economy? Let's start with the chaos. Part 1. The exploding Wild West. In the early 1870s, the American oil industry wasn't a sleek corporate machine. It was a complete dumpster fire. When oil was struck in Pennsylvania, right here on the map, thousands of prospectors, con artists, and amateur businessmen rushed in. Anyone with a few $1,000 and a death wish could build a crude oil refinery. And because it was so easy to enter the market was a bloodbath. Prices fluctuated violently. You could become a millionaire on a Tuesday and go completely bankrupt by Friday. Plus, there was the minor issue that refining crude oil back then involved a high probability of your factory violently exploding. To most people, this was just the cost of doing business. But to John D. Rockefeller, who was running a refinery over in Cleveland, Ohio, this chaos was physically repulsive. Rockefeller was a guy who worshipped spreadsheets before spreadsheets existed. He kept a little book called Ledger A, where he recorded every single penny he ever spent. He looked at the frantic, exploding, cutthroat oil market and thought, you know what's better than competing with these idiots? Owning them. He believed competition was wasteful. The only way to fix the industry was to control it. All of it. Part 2. Devil Bill and the Obsession with Control. To understand why this quiet, church-going accountant was so psychotically obsessed with absolute control, you have to look at the guy who raised him. John's dad was a man named William Avery Rockefeller, though everyone in town just called him Devil Bill. Bill wasn't a businessman. He was a literal, real-life snake oil salesman. He pretended to be a deaf-mute botanic physician, sold fake cancer cures in glass bottles out of a wagon, and frequently abandoned his family for months at a time while living a double life with a secret second wife. Devil Bill had a very specific parenting style. He once famously bragged, "I cheat my boys every chance I get. I want to make them sharp." He would lend his teenage son John money and then randomly charge him exorbitant interest out of nowhere, just to keep him paranoid. He wanted to raise a hustler. But instead, his chaotic, deceitful lifestyle had the exact opposite effect. It traumatized John into becoming a hyper-organized control freak. John hated the unpredictability of his father. He hated the mess. He hated the risk. While other kids were playing outside, John was sitting in his room calculating the exact interest on small loans he made to his classmates. He sought stability the way a drowning man seeks oxygen. So when John grew up and looked at the early oil industry, he didn't see a glorious free market. He saw Devil Bill. He saw thousands of reckless gamblers, liars, and cheats creating complete chaos. And he decided he was going to discipline the entire American economy. Part 3. The Rule of Capture and Rivers of Muck. The chaos Rockefeller hated so much was actually baked into the very laws of the United States. It was all because of a stupid legal precedent called the Rule of Capture. Here's how it worked. Imagine you and your neighbor own adjacent plots of land. Underneath both of your properties is a giant connected pool of oil. If your neighbor builds a rig and starts pumping, he is legally allowed to suck all the oil out from under your land, too. The oil belongs to whoever captures it first. This created a catastrophic psychological panic. If you found oil on your land, you couldn't just cap it and save it for later. You had to pump it as fast as humanly possible before the guy next door stole it all. The result? Absolute, unrestrained overproduction. Guys were pumping so much crude oil out of the ground that they literally had nowhere to put it.
ran out of barrels. They ran out of tanks. They started digging giant mud pits just to hold the oil. But it rained, the pits flooded, and literal rivers of black sludge washed through the streets of Pennsylvania. And because economics is a game of supply and demand, this tidal wave of oil crushed the price. A barrel of oil would sell for $20 one year and 10 cents the next. It was cheaper than water. Entire towns went bankrupt overnight. Refineries caught fire. Men blew themselves up with nitroglycerin trying to open new wells. To Rockefeller, this wasn't just bad business. It was a sin. God had put this valuable resource in the ground, and these idiot prospectors were spilling it into the rivers because they couldn't coordinate a simple supply chain. Part 4. The 39 Drops of Solder. While the rest of the industry was losing its mind, Rockefeller was back in Cleveland, quietly building a fortress. His refinery wasn't a shack that caught fire every 3 weeks. It was a massive, spotless, state-of-the-art facility called the Excelsior Works.
Rockefeller didn't just want to refine oil. He wanted to squeeze the absolute maximum value out of every single microscopic atom of the business. Back then, the main product of oil was kerosene, used for lighting lamps. When you refined crude into kerosene, you were left with a bunch of highly flammable, useless byproducts. Most refiners literally dumped these byproducts into the Cuyahoga River under the cover of darkness. Not John. He figured out how to use the waste. He took the heavy sludge and sold it as lubricating oil for trains. He took the leftover tar and sold it to paving companies to make roads. He even took the most dangerous, volatile byproduct, a highly explosive liquid called gasoline, and instead of dumping it, he figured out a way to burn it to fuel his own factory's machines. He ruthlessly cut out every single middleman. Why pay a plumber when you can hire your own in-house plumbers? Why pay for wagons when you can buy the horses yourself? The best example of this is the barrels. Everyone else bought their oak oil barrels from independent coopers for about $2.50 each. Rockefeller looked at that price, scowled, went out, bought his own forest, hired his own lumberjacks, dried his own wood, and built his own barrels for 96 cents. There's a legendary story that perfectly captures his terrifying level of obsession. Rockefeller was walking through one of his plants and stopped to watch a machine that was sealing the 5-gallon tin cans of oil. He asked the operator, "How many drops of solder do you use to seal each can?" The operator said, 40. Rockefeller told him to try 38. The can leaked. He told him to try 39. The can held. By changing the manufacturing process from 40 drops of solder to 39 drops of solder, John D. Rockefeller saved his company $2,500 in his first year, and hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next decade. He was a machine. He was operating on a level of hyper-efficiency that the world had never seen before. But efficiency alone wasn't going to fix the exploding Wild West of the oil fields. Because no matter how perfect Rockefeller made his own factory, he was still at the mercy of the fluctuating prices caused by the thousands of idiots overproducing crude oil in Pennsylvania. He realized that surviving the game wasn't enough. He had to be the only one playing it. So, what's the plan, John? Buy them all out? No. Too expensive. And they won't sell. So, how do we get their factories? We rig the game so hard they literally have no choice. Smart boy. But slightly evil. Part 5. The South Improvement Conspiracy. In 1871, Rockefeller realized something important. Owning the oil doesn't matter if you can't move it. The railroads were the arteries of the country. Whoever controlled the shipping rates controlled the fate of every refinery on Earth. So, Rockefeller went to New York and held secret meetings with the heads of the 3 biggest railroads in America. And he proposed a shadow corporation called the South Improvement Company. On paper, it sounded like a boring infrastructure project. In reality, it was a cartel designed to break the kneecaps of every independent oilman in America. Here was the deal. The railroads would publicly double the price to ship oil. For the average refinery, this was an instant death sentence. But Rockefeller and his buddies in the cartel would get massive, secret cash rebates under the table. That alone would have given him a monopoly.
But Rockefeller wasn't backing down. He demanded a clause called a drawback. Wait, so I get a massive discount on my own shipping? Yes, John. And when my competitors ship their oil at the new insanely high price? Yes. I want a cut of their money too. You want us to tax your enemies and just give the money to you? Exactly. Let that sink in. If a rival shipped oil to New York, the railroad charged them double, took a massive chunk of that cash, and secretly handed it to Rockefeller. Every time his enemies did business, they were directly funding his empire. Oh, and the railroads also agreed to send Rockefeller daily spy reports on exactly who his rivals were selling to.
The trap was set. All Rockefeller had to do was spring it. Part 6. The Cleveland Massacre. In February 1872, the execution began, and Rockefeller didn't even raise his voice. He didn't send threatening letters. He just casually walked into the offices of the 25 other refineries in Cleveland, sat down, and opened his meticulously kept ledgers. Imagine you're a self-made pioneer. You've built a massive factory, and this quiet, polite accountant walks in and acts like a mortician offering you a discount on your own coffin. Rockefeller would show them his numbers. He'd vaguely hint that shipping rates were about to get absolutely catastrophic for anyone who wasn't him. He didn't explicitly explain the illegal cartel. He didn't have to. I'll buy your refinery right now for 40% of what it's worth. Are you insane? I'm not selling. I'll fight you in the market. You literally can't. By next month, your shipping costs will mathematically bankrupt you. Take the cash, or I will crush you into dust. It was extortion wrapped in a gentleman's handshake. The psychological damage was immense. These hardened businessmen realized instantly that they were mice in a maze, and Rockefeller owned the walls. One by one, they lost their minds. Some tried to hold out, but then the rumors of the secret railroad routes leaked. Shipping costs doubled overnight. Panic ripped through Cleveland. In just 39 days, 22 of the 26 refineries in Cleveland completely surrendered to John D. Rockefeller. In less than 6 weeks, he swallowed 25% of the entire American oil industry without throwing a single punch. Part 7. The Oil War. But you can't secretly bankrupt 24 companies without making a little noise. When the guys pulling the oil out of the ground in Pennsylvania found out about the South Improvement Company, they completely lost it. They realized that if Rockefeller controlled all the refineries, he would be the only buyer in the world. He could pay them a penny a barrel, and they'd have to take it. The drillers went to war. Literally, it was called the Oil War of 1872. Thousands of angry men marched through the streets. They built giant effigies of Rockefeller and set them on fire. They dragged their own oil barrels into the dirt. We're boycotting the cartel. Not one drop of oil goes to Cleveland. And it worked. The embargo starved Rockefeller's massive new factories. The press absolutely roasted him, calling him a monster, an octopus, and a threat to democracy itself. The public was furious. Congress launched an investigation. The railroad executives, terrified of the bad PR, completely folded. They tore up the secret contracts. A week later, the state of Pennsylvania officially banned the South Improvement Company. The drillers celebrated in the streets. The press declared victory. The evil monopoly was dead. Except, we didn't actually win. Part 8. The Phantom Defeat. The drillers thought they won because they killed the cartel. What they didn't realize was that Rockefeller didn't need the cartel anymore. Remember when I said he bought 22 factories in 39 days? Yeah, he kept those. The secret contracts were gone, but the massive, unchallengeable empire he had just built was totally intact. He was now so unbelievably huge that the railroads had no choice but to do whatever he wanted. Almost immediately after the public stopped paying attention, Rockefeller just went back to the railroads. Hey, so the Shadow Corporation is illegal now. Yes, John, we can't do the secret rebates anymore. Cool.
but I own a quarter of the industry now. If you don't give me the exact same massive discounts under the table, I'll take my business to your competitor, and you'll go bankrupt."
Okay, here's your discount.
He didn't need a shadow corporation. He just had too much leverage. The guys who fought him ended up broke and forgotten. The guys who swallowed their pride and took Rockefeller's buyout offer in Standard Oil stock, they became multi-millionaires, riding the coattails of the most ruthless machine ever built. Rockefeller used this exact same playbook to conquer New York, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh. 10 years later, he controlled 90% of all oil in America. He became the first billionaire in history. So, did the Cleveland Massacre happen exactly like this? Absolutely. The ledgers match. The congressional hearings are public record. Something happened in those 39 days that was so terrifying, American capitalism never recovered. And the whole thing started because some railroad guys wanted to overcharge for shipping.